What's up, LinkedIn community? This is Adam Conrad, founder and CXO of Great Recruiters, experience management and brand promotion for the staffing industry, and more importantly, recruiters. And I'm fired up for my guest today. Joining me today is Satyan Chokshi. We met when we launched in 2017 at TechServe Alliance, man. And, I loved your passion for what you're doing. The day I met you, I just felt a different energy, and I'm just so glad we've stayed connected through all this time. But Sat, welcome to GR Live. How are you doing today?
I appreciate that, Adam, and I feel the same. I mean, I was just talking about your success story to a couple of the people that, I've actually just come today to our India office, and I was just trying to get feedback on them. Dude, your story's been incredible, and I was just talking to them about your story. So I'm appreciative of being on this platform as well.
No, and I appreciate that, and I think my success is only realized through the success of the people using our platform, right? I mean, and so when you share feedback about your recruiters loving the feedback, wanting the competition and all of that, dude, it means the absolute world to me, because it means I created a product that's valuable, not just to organizations, but the individuals in those organizations. So thank you for that. But this isn't about us today. This is not about us today. So Sat is the CEO of a company called TalentRupt. And when I started in the industry, TalentRupt is an RPO provider providing recruitment services to the staffing industry. Is that accurate?
That's right.
Okay. And when I started, I know there was a very high barrier of trust. And I've seen the adoption of RPO services become really a cornerstone in a lot of successful organizations. So I definitely want to learn from you and what you're seeing out there. But before we jump into all this stuff, the number one thing I like to know from our guests is, no one grows up thinking I'm going to be in the recruitment industry. I'm going to be a recruiter, right? Unless mom or dad or aunt or uncle owned a staffing firm. So I fell into it, fell in love, and give us your story about how you fell into this industry.
Yeah, so I came to the US like 23 years back, and I was like you just said, never thought that I was going to get into recruiting. In fact, when I came over here, I was a web designer, and I came in the 2000. I came in the year 2000 when the 2000 bust, the .com bust happened. So clearly, it wasn't working in my favor. And so interestingly, the company that I was working for was called Buy It Now, and it literally got bought over. And then it was downhill from there from a web designer standpoint. But what I got a little bit of a break, because the company that the parent company of that company was a staffing agency, and they basically told me, hey, while we get you a project, why can't do you want to help us with recruiting people? So I'm like, okay, and that's how I actually got into the whole recruiting field. And it's been since then I've actually worn a few hats. Adam, quite honestly, I think you probably understand this a lot better, because you are fixated with one thing, is just quality and experience, and that's what kind of drove me as well. Like when I started, I wanted to make sure I understand the entire spectrum of staffing, which means I started off on the recruiting side for technology for staffing agencies, and then for almost a decade I actually went on the corporate side, just because I wanted to know how does the corporate look at the vendors. And
Right.
Then that's when I actually truly understood, there are so many nuances into the staffing space that were not covered, and there are a lot of early mistakes that I was seeing that people were making, and that was not being perceived well from the corporate standpoint. So I used all those data points. I don't want to say I'm a data junkie, but I love data. How about that? Because that's the only thing that speaks truth to me.
It doesn't lie to you.
It doesn't lie to you. That's the only thing that will speak truth to me. And it's helped me tremendously understand businesses where I don't necessarily know a lot of it. So I do a lot of research when it comes to it, and that all comes through data. And so I collected all these data points before I even started my own agency. And then, after 10 years of being in the staffing space, I decided to open up my own staffing agency. And I had, at that point in time, interestingly, so I was born and brought up in Bombay and came over here, 23 years back. When I opened my staffing agency, Adam, quite honestly, I did not use an offshore RPO. I thought the exact same thing that you just asked me. The question is like, people were apprehensive that, hey, can a real experience be, can I achieve the same experience from somebody offshore? I
Right.
wasn't convinced myself. And biggest mistake of my life, right? And I decided to kind of, a couple of my friends basically who were in the VC space um, basically told me, it's like, hey, do you want to look into getting acquired by a bigger brand? So I just kind of, raised my hand saying that, okay, let me just see how this whole thing works. The first question they asked me when they opened my books is, why are you not using an offshore RPO? First question. And I'm like, why is that even a concern right now? I'm like, I told them about my experience not being nice and this. He's like, Sat, your margins, overall margins in the staffing space is so horrid that if you don't use an offshore RPO, you're never going to get a good exit. And
Right.
I'm like, damn. I withdrew myself, literally withdrew myself. And I said, you know what? Let me go and look at an RPO. So that's when I actually started working with an offshore RPO. And I saw so many gaps, so many gaps. Interestingly, I used an offshore RPO, went back to the same company and sold my company to a company in the US in New York. At that point in time, I realized that, okay, you know what? All the things that I've learned over the last, 6 years when I ran my own company, I'm like, I can open up an own RPO and just not make the mistakes that all these other guys have made.
Yeah.
That's how I started TalentRupt.
Talk to me. So TalentRupt, when did you start that company?
Yeah. So we started TalentRupt in 2016.
Okay.
I exited from my firm and I took that and I'm like, you know what? There's a massive need for offshore RPOs, but there's a way that offshore RPOs should operate that most people should not have the concerns that you just asked me, which is, oh, I'm dealing with India or dealing with Philippines or dealing with some other country and they have an apprehension against it.
Right.
Why is that apprehension there? So I wanted to break that barrier.
Yeah. And so tell me, when you were working there, like, what were the big gaps you saw that you wanted to make sure that, as you established the TalentRupt brand and organization and the quality there, what were the
Yeah.
gaps that you were really focused on filling in that was going to make the experience working with your team better than what traditionally had been out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, what I did was, again, to collect data. What I did was I literally flew down, bought a ticket to India, flew down over here, and I interviewed 50 recruiters in one day, and it was like what's it called, like a super day, and I just called people in, and I'm like, it's a 15-minute interview, and all I need you to do is answer one question, which is, why did you leave your previous job? Give me three reasons why you leave your previous job. So all that data that came in, I collected all the data from 50 people, why they left their previous job. Because the biggest problem in India or even Philippines or even Mexico right now, which is being considered as an offshore partner, is
Yeah.
attrition problem. Attrition is a massive problem in India, big problem. And I'm like, okay, why is that happening? Because I suffered through that, right? I mean, that quality was getting depreciated because there's a massive attrition problem. Then I started realizing, okay, there's a reason why that is. And so three things came out of that, when I interviewed these guys.
Yeah.
The first was people are not getting paid on time. People are not getting paid on time, and you were like, why would that, like, I'm like, okay, that's a silly reason. Second, there's no proper infrastructure given to the recruiters. And third, there is massive hierarchy levels over here. So in India, it's known for hierarchy levels, and over here culturally there's like, I'm not saying, I don't want to say that this happens in every company, but if you are the manager, then you are right. So I had to fight through that a lot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, because it's instilled, like you said, it's instilled in the culture. It's a cultural kind of thing. It's not a kind of what I look at as servant leadership. Like, managers are really people that are there to serve the people that they're supporting, not
correct,
to dictate to, right? And
exactly.
is that
And
what you kind of saw?
Totally. And I'm like, I did not, when I was working on the corporate side in the US, I'm like, that is the exact opposite of what I've seen, right?
Yeah,
I've seen only that, okay, people have, you are being heard, an employee should be heard. I mean, I took all these good points from, working on the corporate side. And I'm like, why can't I infuse that in India? If you really think about the three things, they're so low. The bar is so damn low that I'm like, all I need to do is in order to become successful is not do those three things, right? And if I don't do those three things, I'm ahead of the curve.
right,
And I did not want to give, I may come across a little different over here, is I did not even give importance to my clients, quite honestly, Adam. My first thing was, it's like, if I don't take care of my recruiters, then my clients are never going to get the right experience.
right,
So I had to understand the psychology of a recruiter over here before I even started the company, because I'm like, okay, if these guys are happy, then there's a massive ripple effect to that. The candidate is suddenly happy. If the candidate is happy, then the candidate talks to their end client about the staffing agency that they, are supported through. So there's a
right.
massive ripple to it.
Well, and from a candidate's perspective, they don't care where the person's sitting. They care about how well they're being taken care of, right?
100%.
And if that person isn't engaged, I mean, if they're worried about whether or not they're working and not getting paid, if they're worried about not having the right tools, experience, training, development, then that's a lot of worry that probably comes through on phone conversations, and it's just not a good quality of life. So,
Like 100%.
what have you seen as the result of kind of focusing on? Because I love you said I didn't focus on the client first; I focused on the recruiter because I think most staffing firms need to change that perspective of that we're in the recruitment industry. If you don't have the recruiters that can attract the talent, you don't have a business.
Exactly.
So I think it's a center point, but like, how was that? What were the results that you saw by focusing on that first, and what has it done for the business from when you started to where you are today?
Yeah, that's majorly impacted our organization culturally, from a attrition standpoint, from a retention standpoint, from a general vibe standpoint over here in the company itself, that they're finally feeling that, okay, he cares or they care. The
Right,
organization cares for what we say. We are being heard. And you could see it early on when we started off. I mean, I knew that I was battling giants who were my competitors, and we were late in the game technically. I mean, if I'm starting in 2016, RPO business has been around for the last 50 years. So we were really behind from that standpoint. And I realized that if I wanted to do this, I'm not going to cut corners. I'm not going to cut corners. I'm doing it the right way. I'm going to make sure that, all these pointers that I'm getting from my recruiters, if I'm not taking those into consideration, then I'm just going to be another RPO. And then it's going to come back to the same question that you asked me, is like, why people have apprehension for using recruiters from India. I just want to change the experience, because I know there's a massive, massive ROI if it's structured correctly. And I realized that, these recruiters, when I actually I took the Google-esque kind of, um, you know, feel from the US and actually brought it into over here. I didn't want the recruiters over here to feel that they were working for an Indian company. I wanted them to feel that they are working for an American company, because technically they are, right?
yeah,
And that changed the perception completely. I had, we gamified the entire situation. We gamified the entire company, right? We did silly things, but those things went so far with my employees. We got beanbags and gaming stations, and that became like an internal competition between everybody, because we did this thing, and you probably laugh at this. I told, when we started off, we had a PlayStation over here,
yeah,
and we had a competition saying that whoever makes three quality submissions gets to get 15 minutes of gaming time at the end of the day, right? Now think about it. You have 100 recruiters, and 100 recruiters looking at one person playing a beanbag, right? He's playing a PlayStation for 15 minutes. Suddenly, we didn't realize this, but there was an internal competition going, because now there's like, okay, tomorrow I want to win. So what are they doing for that? They are doing quality submissions, and
right,
that's where they're getting a shot. Now these guys are taking pictures of them taking selfies and saying, I love my job, and putting on Instagram. That became a recruiting tool for me. I didn't
right.
need I
It
didn't see
wasn't even
this.
intentional. It's just creating a good culture.
It's
People
just
are going to
creating.
share it, especially when that isn't something that exists commonplace.
Yeah. And that's made me realize is like, if I just take care of my employees first, everything will fall in place. And so
So,
that became the center point of our organization.
so talk about the success your clients have using your services, because I think there's still a huge opportunity for
Yeah.
a portion of people's teams from a cost perspective and ROI. Like,
Yeah.
what are they realizing as a result of using your services?
Yeah. So the good thing is like most of the staffing space understands RPOs well enough. Now they either have a
Right.
bad experience or had no experience at all, right? And for us, it was like, okay, can we change the perception of the people who actually had the experience of an RPO and see if we could change it? They realized suddenly that because I was passionately talking about all the changes that I'm bringing to the RPO space, right?
Right.
And they
Right.
realized that our attrition numbers changed completely, Adam. In our industry, in the RPO space, the attrition is 37%.
Wow.
When we started off in the first 3 years, we were at sub 10%. Now, as you scale, and somebody did tell me, as you scale, your numbers are going to get higher. We are right now also at sub 17%.
That's
People
great.
don't want to leave us because we've taken good care of them. We've
Right.
made them feel like, okay, this is a company that they want to be part of, right? They want to be, and now that directly impacts the client. Why? Because, you know, if there's a massive attrition problem, the client has to keep, retraining the people. It's a whole process, and
Right.
that's never going to be a good. It's like, think about it, like you spend hours and hours and hours training a person, and then 2 months later the person is gone. That's it's not the
It's not
best
it's not
use of
it's
time.
not efficient. I've
It's
been
not a
saying, like, I want to get the bottom's going to churn that
yeah,
17% or whatever it is. It's
yeah,
not for everybody. I mean, that's the reality is, if you can
yeah,
give them all the tools that support, it's just not for everybody. But how do you get the middle to level up? And then what I love is, how do you get your team operating to what a highly efficient team stateside would be doing?
yeah.
Like that, then from a cost perspective, I mean, it's just enormous. I mean, it's an
So no,
enormous lift, and it's feeling connected. I love what you said. It's like you want them feeling like they're working for the American company because
100%.
that's who they're supporting, right?
Yeah,
It's a great insight. So, competition. Uh, I do know there's a lot of competition in recruitment,
yeah,
and I love the PlayStation piece. What
yeah.
other things are you doing to kind of create that competition for keeping people doing the right things on a daily basis?
Yeah, and this question comes up all the time because a lot of people have been burned, Adam. And I hate saying this. The lot of small. I'm not saying small or big RPOs have played it in very unethically. They've taken recruiters, they've shared recruiters, they've used the same recruiter, two different clients. We just don't do that. I'm like, I ain't doing that. I'm not going to get sleep if I actually operate my business like that. So I've been very upfront with my clients as to how we do. Sometimes they do argue with me about my cost. My cost is a little bit more higher than what an average RPO does, but there's a reason behind that, right? I mean,
Right.
we spend a boatload behind our employees, right? We give them all the perks that they want so they can get excited about their roles, right? And when they see that, they've seen the positive ROI that they should expect that the client is getting now, just because they know these people, okay, they take care of their recruiters. So, I've seen a lot of negative stuff in the
Yeah.
RPO space, quite honestly. And it's a uphill battle for me
Yeah.
specifically because I am going with one particular agenda is like I want to just change the perception of American staffing agencies that hey, it is okay to deal with India. There are companies out there who are ethical. There are companies out there, and I'm not saying that every company out there is doing that. And I'm saying that there's been a lot of them, and that equates to the quality, right? If the same person is being shared by two different things, there is no way that you can have that person be, focused into a job. So you're burning the recruiter out. You're
Yeah.
burning him. It's just it's not good.
appreciation, how do they how do you, with a team that's scaling and large, like how do you make sure that you're giving them the accolades and the
Yeah,
encouragement, because it is a tough business, and this is doesn't matter where you're located, it's a tough
yeah.
business. How are you doing to help keep them engaged on a daily basis?
Quite frankly, there are a couple of things. I mean, culturally, we do a lot. We do a lot. Now, that is common against a lot of RPOs. Everybody has to, because retention is very important. But we rely a lot on technology as well. Quite honestly, that's where you come in. Quite
Yeah,
honestly, and like I know that you mentioned that this is not about your show. I mean, this is not about. But I have to give props to the simplicity of the product that you build, because it gives a massive platform for these recruiters to feel that they're being heard, and not from internally but from the outside, right?
sure.
These are the people that they are really impacting. And right before this call, I was actually talking to a couple of my recruiters, because I mean, we've been in business with you guys for a bit. I was even if it's a couple of years, but my recruiters are constantly challenging themselves, because they're like, hey, we want to be great recruiter certified, or we want our review to be better than my the guy sitting next to me. So it's like an internal competition for being better. What
Yeah,
else do you need from a
right,
recruiter? What else can I ask for?
right.
And it's technologies like that that we've decided that, even though it cuts into my margin, because the RPO business, everybody knows, it's a very, very cutthroat business. It's a
Yep,
very slim margin business. And we had spoken about this when we were initially talking about that, margins are so low that it's, sometimes there's a struggle for us to invest in technology. Even if we want to, we can't afford it from that
right,
standpoint.
right.
But these are the things that we are saying that, hey, it's better to actually invest in technologies like yourself, like the platform, because we feel that that's a massive value add to not only our bottom line, but more importantly, my recruiters feel a lot more appreciated.
Yeah, no, you know what's funny? It's I've talked to a lot of different RPO, and they're like, I don't know if I want to get our recruiters reviewed. I don't know if it's going to be good feedback. I'm like, and that's what I loved about it. You're like, well, why wouldn't I want to do that? If I'm trying to lower the barriers of that trust, of that quality of everything. I mean,
Yeah,
I look at it from a you have a quality assurance tool implemented in your organization to make sure that your recruiters are doing their best every single day for your clients, because that's who they're representing, right? So
correct.
for them, it gives them the motivation to continue. And I love hearing that. Like when the recruiters are trying to lobby up the leaderboard, or somebody gets a review and somebody wants. I mean, it's good competition. It's not like
Great.
it's not it's fighting to create great experiences, and they're only going to get better by
Yeah,
doing that. I mean, that's the beauty of it. And then from a provider standpoint, it's like, look, complete transparency, what people think about our team. I mean, I
yeah,
think that's the best way to and it doesn't matter how you use our tool or who you are. I mean, that's what the goal is
yeah,
create a way to get the feedback to ensure the quality of service and show it. And it
100%.
is what it is. Either love it or get better, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah.
goal.
And the people who are shying away from it, they want to hide something. Obviously, that's why they don't want to do it. So that my thing is like,
Yeah.
you have to, like, if you can't chat, and of course I'm going to get I'm not going to say that all my recruiters have got, like, 5 stars. Of course there
Right.
is recruiters who've got 3 stars and 4s, but that's an opportunity, that's a gap.
Right.
And if I can get that intel from a candidate, I can make my manager say, hey, sit with this team, this is
Right.
what went wrong, right? This gives a reflection point to even that candidate, and I mean the recruiter, and the
Right.
recruiter is just going to get better. So if you shy away from getting better and data, there's no growth aspect. And for us, the only way we survive is if we just constantly just keep getting better at what we do, and that's a reflection in the quality of work that we give out.
Yeah. So if you're talking to prospects out there, somebody's listening, somebody's thinking, I've considered it, I don't really know. I mean, what would you say are the three biggest value props of why it makes sense to have some of your team, if not all of it, but some of
Yeah.
your team on an offshore RPO model?
Yeah. So I almost never advise them to go all offshore. I always tell them have a hybrid model, always, right? I mean, there are certain roles which may be extremely high level roles, which requires the candidate requires that touch from somebody from the US. And we are not one of those companies that fabricate names. We're not one of those guys who say that, oh, we're not from India when we're actually sitting in India. That used to happen. So
Yeah.
right there and there, again, the experience is lost when somebody comes. Now, I pick up the phone, and if I'm going to say I'm John Smith, suddenly it's like, okay, this guy's a
Well,
scam.
your transparency has just gone out the door. Your trust just bottomed out, and now I'm
What?
thinking, what can I believe, right?
And you were saying that, okay, I'm going to trust this guy of getting me a job, and you're
Right.
going to fabricate a name. So right there and there, this doesn't make sense to me. So
Yeah.
it's small things like that that we have paid attention, and we tell our clients that, hey, have a hybrid model. We want to come across like your research team. You want to have your onshore team, do certain kind of roles, right? So I mean, there's a lot of positives on offshore RPO. I mean, quite honestly, Adam, any agency, big or small, right? There's a massive cost implication to it,
W-
right? You get a 3 to 4x on the ROI
on
for
the
sure.
ROI, right?
I mean,
And what is have you seen a change in not like, let's switch from the client. I'm really interested in, like, but from the candidate perspective, right? You just said it. I'm not saying I'm John Smith. I'm doing these things. We're being transparent. We're being open. Here's where we're based. But have you seen a change in, from a candidate perspective, that they're becoming more, it's more commonplace, so it's more comfortable for them, that it's more expected that I may be hearing from somebody that is offshore?
100%. I mean, and COVID, COVID helped that a lot, right? I
Gotcha.
mean, through COVID, everybody knows that now it's distributed teams. The new word
Right.
is distributed teams. Even people from India back in the day, I mean, where it was abused, now they know that, hey, if you don't perform well and if your production and your quality is not good, they're going to go to the door next door, right?
Right.
So it's stuff like that, and now that has elevated the quality all throughout. Candidate obviously know that, hey, now at this point in time, it's the real global economy. Everybody is
Right.
anywhere, right? You book a ticket, airline ticket is probably getting routed to either China or Philippines or India. So people are used to or getting. I mean, if this was 20 years back, it was a big challenge. Now I don't see as much. We do get complaints about sometimes communication, right?
Gotcha.
Accents and stuff like that. And I've made it very clear to all our employees, right? Do not fake an accent. Don't fake an accent. Don't pretend to be who you're not. Okay. Or if you we a lot of the problem with India, or when I say the communication style, is we could speak a lot more faster, right? So what we just train our guys is like, just talk slowly. If you talk slowly enough, the Indian accent is very easy to understand,
Right.
right? But my clients ask me, like, Sir, are they going to talk like you? I'm like, no, I've been in the US for 23 years. You can't expect a guy who's always lived in India to sound and behave like me. No, it's not going to happen. So I'm very upfront. Honestly, Adam, I'm very, very upfront with my clients about I'm not one of those guys who will raise their hand and say yes for everything. I just won't,
Yeah.
because I want to set the stage right.
Right. Right. And I think you said so. Like, there's a formula to how to make it work, right?
Yeah,
You're going to have your onshore, and I'm with you. I think that hybrid model, and just having somebody stateside when things get a little bit more complicated or whatever it is, just knowing somebody here is close to home helping out. But like, now recruiting, you could be in California recruiting in New York. Like, what does it matter if,
it's
you know,
all over.
it's how you treat the people. Do you have knowledge? Do you have experience? Are you being transparent? And I think that's one of the biggest things is that I saw early on, was that trying to be something they weren't, right?
Yeah,
I had a client that was using GR, and they had a split team.
yeah,
And their goal secretly was they wanted their offshore team to outperform their onshore from an
yeah,
experience standpoint. And it
yeah,
took a while. And they were one of
yeah,
our first customers. And I got a call one day, and he's like, guess what just happened? I was like, what's that?
yeah.
They're like, last 90 days, our offshore team from an experience standpoint
I love it.
outperformed our onshore team. And I'm like, and it made everybody's eyes open up. And it just goes to show it's
Yeah,
it's it's not a light switch. People think, oh, all of a sudden it's just going to work. I can hire a recruiter
Yeah.
and, I'm going to give them 6 months to get up to speed. But,
Yeah.
when I hire you, you need to be efficient from day one, right?
Love that, Adam. I'm getting goosebumps when you said that. I have clients, I have people who come to us and have the most unrealistic expectation.
Right.
And they're like, oh, I have my recruiter over here. He spent 2 months working on this job and they can't fill it. I want you guys to fill it. I'm like, you are telling me your recruiter, who you're paying about $100,000 over there, cannot fill a job. And now you want the same job to be filled over here after 2 months of working. Why do you think this is? We have the magic pill. We don't. We're another
Right.
recruiting company.
Right.
It should not. The problem, I tell my clients one thing: if you ever want to use an RPO, don't use RPO as a service. If you're using an RPO as a service, you will 100% fail. If you use it as a tool to an extension to your team, you
That
will
was the
want.
word I was waiting for you to use, extension.
Yeah,
It's an extension, not a service.
not a service, because the minute you use it as a service, your psychology changes about, it's like, oh, I paid X amount and I need that in return. No, think of
Right.
that X amount just as a payroll.
Right.
Do you
Right.
have the same expectation when a recruiter walks into your onshore office and you tell that guy, hey, guess what, today's your first day, I want you to make a placement tomorrow? If that's not an expectation, then why are we having that expectation?
Right.
Why is that expectation to us?
Do you find your clients take the recruiters that are an extension of their team through their training and development programs?
So we force them to, and most
Right.
most of them now, they get this whole model because,
Right.
quite honestly, the margins, Adam, in our business are dwindling. They're going down every time. Rebates. There's so many things that lower the margin.
Yeah.
Today, I give this example to my clients. You could have, Adam Conrad could have the 10 best recruiters in the world. Let's put it this way, okay? They're sitting there. And I could have not the 10 recruiters, I could have 50 recruiters. I will beat you all day long. There's only one reason why, because we are in this game, who picks up the phone first and gets in front of the candidate. So today, your 8, 10 recruiters just have 8 hours. But guess what? That's why there are certain agencies, they just know this model so well that they can scale. And that's the second reason why people should use offshore RPO. It massively helps them to scale their output.
Right.
Massively,
You
right?
can only make
So
so many calls a day. And then when you get somebody on the phone, that's less calls being made. And so it's the
that's what's
volume
fun.
game, right? I used to look at it as you could get, and I don't know the numbers. I used to look at it as, okay, if I could get 3 folks from an offshore model
Yeah,
to do 1.5 at the cost of what it cost me for one person, but they could do 50% more, that's a win.
that's a win. That's exactly what I tell my clients. I'm like, if you have one recruiter and I'm giving you 3 recruiters for the cost of one, let's say one of them fail, you still have 100% return on your money.
Right.
Because let's say if
Right.
your one recruiter makes one deal a month,
Right.
okay, and these 2 guys, between the 3 guys, they make 2 placements
Right.
for the same amount of money, you doubled your profit. I mean,
100%.
again, this concept is not new. It's
Right.
been going on for 50 years. So companies that know this model, guess what? More and more people are coming down now saying that, okay, we either start our own company over there in India or we just use an offshore RPO because they don't
Right.
want to go through the bureaucracies.
And they're not all created the same, and you
Mhm.
need to have the right process in place. And for us, it's like when we had it, it was like, why aren't we onboarding? And we didn't at first. We're like, you're a
Yeah.
service. And we
Yeah.
realized, like, if we hired this person right here, we would have a 30-day training and a mentorship and getting them into the
Exactly.
talk tracks and understand the clients and the nuance. Like, why wouldn't we do that with somebody that's
Yeah.
representing us? You're right. It's that mindset. And that's where I
Mindset.
was like, it is not. And I love that you said it. It's an extension of your team, and you can use it strategically to get to more folks. And even if it's in the research and they get, calls set for a recruiter on site, like if you have a senior recruiter on site making 100,000, the last thing you want them doing is hammering, job boards and all that stuff. You want them talking to candidates that are engaged, that they can close, that they can get aligned with, and so it's an efficiency thing.
It's a total efficiency thing. And if
Yeah.
you just, I mean, as you said, I mean, if you just look at this model and change your mindset, there is no way you're not getting a positive ROI on this. No way.
What's your prediction? Because we're running up on time, but I want your prediction. 5 years from now, what percentage of firms, growing firms, the modern firms, are going to have some sort of augmented staff, extension of their staff offshore out of the US?
I mean, upwards of 80-90%. Now, my prediction goes differently because AI is coming into the mix. So my whole, I mean, that's a whole different topic that we can talk about. But that's I mean, I'm super passionate about AI, and the more and more I learn about it, I'm like, there is a lot of complexity around it. But if let's assume AI is not there, I mean, I would say that in the next 5 years, I mean, 89% of the companies are going to have offshore RPOs. There's no doubt about it. They have to. They
It's
have
great.
to.
Seth, my friend, it's always great catching up with you. How can folks get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about the strategy, or what the service looks like? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is to hit me up on LinkedIn. I mean, I'll be more than happy to, even if they don't use us, I mean, I'll be more than happy to kind of guide them as to how they should be doing it, because this is something that I take really seriously. And I'm very passionate about how staffing agencies can actually win in this space. And, I'm happy to kind of get on a call with them.
It's awesome. And
Man, thank you so much, man.
I appreciate all the insight that you provided. I think this is a topic that hasn't been talked about a lot publicly like this. And so I really appreciate you just being open and transparent about it and the way that you guys are doing it. And I'm glad to be part of your organization and helping your recruiters succeed and compete for some PlayStation time.
I love it, Adam. Thanks for having me on this, buddy. And we shall catch up soon.
My pleasure.
Ciao.